Mhm.
Welcome to your five-letter word. I'm your host, Christina, and in each episode, we explore how intentional communication and a strong mindset can transform your business, your relationships, and your personal growth. Whether we're covering communication strategies or sharing tips to shift your mindset, this podcast will help you learn to create more meaningful conversations in your life so that you can deepen your relationships and grow your business. So sit back, relax, and soak in the insights as we dive into today's conversation. Welcome to this episode of Your Five-Letter Word. I'm your host, Christina, and I'm so excited to dive into today's topic, which is all about social influences. Now, social influences is something that's super broad, but actually super deep. The way that we're influenced in society, in our environment, in our day to day lives, quite literally stems from the moment that we wake up until we go to sleep and impacts many of our decisions and ultimately our quality of life. So if you're someone who's looking to perhaps shift some things around in your environment, if you're looking to perhaps tailor your environment and the types of social influences that you're exposing yourself to, then this is the episode for you. So let's dive into it. First things first, what are social influences really? From my perspective, social influences are anything that has any sort of impact on us. The way that we think, the way that we believe something, so our belief system, the actions that we take, anything of that nature is a social influence. So to explain this a little bit better, I'm going to present to you something that I like to call my onion layer theory. Imagine that the same way an onion is just a thing with many, many layers. Imagine that we are the onion and your life is an onion, right? So at the core of the onion is you and who you are and really everything to your core. Now, in your life, there's layers that go on top and layers of influence. So if you consider an onion as a whole, the entire thing is made up of many, many layers, but each layer is important. Each layer plays a role in the whole. Now, the outer layers may be a little bit less important, especially the layers that we tend to discard or throw away when we're cutting it up. And the inner layers may be more important or more impactful. But in order to have the whole, you need to have each of the parts. But here's the catch. Each layer impacts the layers around it. So if, for example, you look at an onion and an onion is starting to mold, if there's a piece that's starting to rot, what's going to happen? That piece is going to impact every single other layer around it. And that will spread until the entire thing becomes rotten and you throw it out. The exact same thing happens in your life, in my life, in everyone's life. So let me break it down. At the core, who you are, what you consider yourself to be, your belief systems, you as an individual. But when you start to consider the layers around you, you'll start to realize that there is a lot of influence around you. So at the core is you. The next layers to the onion would be your immediate people around you. For most of us, this is our immediate family. This could also be very close friends that you have, perhaps colleagues that you see every single day, people that you're exposed to on a daily basis that you interact with directly, who have some sort of direct influence on you, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not. Next layer would be a little bit more broad. So this could be your colleagues, even if they're colleagues you're not quite as close with, but that you still see and interact with. It could be members of the community, your neighbors, friends, acquaintances that you still interact with, but that aren't quite as close to the initial layer. Now, if you keep going out, that's where you start to have a little bit broader influences, right? The community that you live in, the environment, the things that you're exposed to, the media that you're consuming, the music that you're listening to. Keep going a little bit broader. That is the society that you live in, perhaps the country, the state, the political party that you're associated with, or that your family is associated with, or things that you're exposed to on a broad societal level. Now, each of these layers, each of these components plays a very integral part in the overall influences that you're experiencing and how they're shaping you. So, for example, if you are someone who is exposed to negativity starting from the core, so starting from your immediate family, the people close to you, that's going to directly impact you because those are the layers closest to you. They have the most direct influence on you. If instead, on the other hand, you're exposed to more positivity, more positive people, people who support you, lift you up, people who give you a safe space to be yourself, that's going to directly influence you as well, but in a positive way. So each layer, each part of the onion is something that must be considered because whether you know it or not, it's having an influence on you. It might be, if you consider the outer layers, it might be having an influence on those outer layers, but the outer layer is having an influence on the inner layer, going all the way in directly to you. Well, again, that's things like considering what type of media are you consuming? Are you consuming a ton of negative news, maybe? Are you consuming things that you've curated intentionally so that you're exposed to positive, maybe motivational, maybe inspirational type of social media? Are you going on social media and feeling negative, feeling less than, feeling like you're missing out, feeling like you're being left behind? These are things that seem like they're part of the everyday culture that we live in. It's just the norm to experience these things. But ultimately, what that is doing is impacting you negatively over and over again. And over time, that builds up and that starts to be really ingrained in your belief system, in your actions, and in your subconscious mind. So it's very important that every single layer, you take a moment to really examine it and the types of influences that you are consuming, knowingly or unknowingly, on a daily basis. So again, if it's easier, start in and then work your way out. So who are you exposed to on a daily basis? Who are you talking to? What kind of friends do you have? Who are your acquaintances? How do they make you feel? What types of people are you hanging out with? What types of shows are you watching? What types of music are you listening to? What types of accounts are you following on social media? Right? All of these things have a direct influence on us, whether we know it or not. So if it's easier for you, start on the inside and work your way out. If it's easier, start on the outside and work your way in. But the important thing is that you do this exercise and you try it out and you see just how much things and people and accounts and companies and so many things are influencing you without you even knowing. Now, once you do that, once you sort of go through the exercise and start to be aware of these influences, that's when you can then go ahead and start curating the types of experiences and the types of influences that you're being exposed to. For example, if you're someone who has a specific goal that you'd like to work towards, are you curating influences at every level that will support and reinforce that goal? Or are you instead self-sabotaging and holding yourself back by instead having influences that either drain you, make you feel more negative, lead to you feeling less motivated, distract you, whatever the case? It's important to start considering this because it's happening on a daily basis, whether you like it or not. So going back to my example, if, for example, you have a goal, you'd like to, let's say you have a business and you'd like to create more awareness about your business and gain more clients. But then you go on social media and you are exposed to a bunch of accounts that are doing it so well and with so much ease that it actually makes you less motivated to try. It makes you frustrated that what you're doing isn't working. That's going to hold you back. What if instead you intentionally curated accounts that made you feel motivated, that shared perhaps tips in a specific area that you're struggling with, that gave advice? Perhaps they even had some sort of resources that you can access. Exposing yourself to that kind of material intentionally will help you get ahead much faster. Now, it starts to get a little bit tricky when it comes to perhaps family or friends, coworkers, colleagues, people that you don't have control over, especially if the people tend to be a little bit more negative. You cannot control other people. You cannot control other people's actions. What you do instead, what you can control is yourself, your thoughts, and your actions. So if you are exposed to someone who is more negative on an everyday basis, perhaps, let's say a colleague who tends to be negative, who tends to criticize, who tends to complain, you control how often you interact with that colleague. You control how much you allow that colleague's criticism, negativity to affect you. You control whether you go home and rant about your colleague and continue thinking about them and letting it affect you, or whether you leave work, leave it behind, and move on with your day and your energy and focus. Focusing on the things that you can control, the things that are in your hands, is what will start to move the needle for you. Even though you may be exposed to things that are negative on an everyday basis, being intentional with limiting the exposure or limiting the way that it impacts you is how you start to move away from those influences. Let's say your coworker's criticizing, complaining, and you have no control over how often you work with her. That's fine. Is there a positive coworker, a coworker that you get along with that can help mitigate some of that can help balance it out for you? Do you have other supports in place? Well, for example, on your lunch break, you can go and listen to something you enjoy in your car, go for a walk outside, eat something nutritious so that you're filled with energy, able to come back to work feeling refreshed rather than spending your lunch break complaining, venting, or even listening to the same thing. Being intentional with the influences around you and the extent to which you let them impact you is what will start to significantly change your life and your perception of your life, even your motivation to do things like work towards your goals, go for that workout, go for a walk, wake up early, eat a little bit healthier. Every single decision that we make is ultimately impacted by our belief system. And our belief system is impacted by the influences that we are exposed to. The longer and the more of a type of influence that we're exposed to, the stronger it will be in affecting our belief system. So that's for curating influences that really resonate with you, that really align with your goals, your values, your motivations. That's where you'll start to notice a significant difference in your life. It's definitely something worth doing. Yeah. How do you go about finding these types of influences? Different ways, depending on what you're looking for. One thing that you can try doing is going online. Social media is a double-edged sword. It can be either very negative and lead to a lot of loss of motivation, a lot of self-comparison, a lot of negativity. Or if you're curating it intentionally, it can be extremely positive in being used for motivation, inspiration, anything along those lines. So the first thing you can do when looking to create more positive social influences for yourself, go online, start looking at different accounts, start looking at different influencers, different businesses, different individuals, anything that really stands out to you and really attracts you as a type of source that you would like to see more of, as a type of influence that you feel is positive for you. But this might be if you are someone who perhaps struggles to get to the gym, struggles with healthy eating, find accounts of individuals that you resonate with, individuals that you like, individuals that when you watch their content, you feel motivated to go ahead and make that salad. You feel motivated to put on your running shoes and go for a walk while listening to their podcast. you feel motivated to go to the gym and try their 10-minute circuit workout. Those types of accounts will have a positive influence on you, not the ones where they are so in shape or such a fitness influencer that you actually lose motivation. Not the account that is making such an extensive smoothie recipe with 17 different steps and ingredients that you don't even want to try this. When it comes to curating and finding these positive social influences, it's always a little bit easier to start at the broad levels, at the society levels, at the outer levels. That's things like the media that you're consuming, the shows that you're watching, the music you're listening to, the podcasts that you're listening to, the YouTube videos that you watch, the social media influencers that you follow. All of these broad outer levels are always easier to start with because they are a lot more in your control than the inner layers, such as your immediate family members, close friends, colleagues. Starting there is easier, but still impactful because every single thing that you're consuming has an impact on you, even if it's just on a subconscious level. So much of what we consume, so much of what we see, so much of the information that we're exposed to is absorbed subconsciously. And understanding that is really important because that's where you go from scrolling mindlessly, listening to something mindlessly, just going about, going through the motions. That's when that ends. And instead, that's when you start to be intentional with curating the right things, the right materials, the right sources of video, music, whatever it is, for yourself, for your goals, for your values. And again, it's easier to start there, but the layers are all connected. It will still make its way in and impact you positively. Once you feel like you've got a good grasp on the outer layers, that's when you can start to work towards the inner layers a little bit more. That's when you start to build the confidence to set the boundaries. That's when you learn the strategies, perhaps to meditate or work out or journal to get rid of the impact of the negative influence that you're noticing, right? Negative interaction with a coworker, rather than letting it linger and impact the entire evening, you've learned to let it go. And as the interaction ends with your coworker, you go about the rest of your day unaffected by it, right? It takes time, it takes effort, but it is something that is completely worth doing because it will change your life. It will change the way that you feel. It will change the way that you think on a daily basis. And that will change the actions that you're taking, the types of experiences that you're having, and really the outcomes that you're getting. So if you have a goal that you're working towards, if you have an idea, a dream, make it easier for yourself by curating the influences that you're exposed to, by really making sure that you are aligning with your values and your goals at every layer, at every step of the way. Now, another thing I'll encourage you to do once you get to the inner layers, that's usually where it's the hardest for people to change things, to shift things around. And that makes sense because it's ultimately hard to change our family members, our friends, our partners, our colleagues. A lot of their actions and their beliefs is out of our control. And that's okay. Because what you'll do instead is you'll start to change yourself. You'll start to change the way that you are reacting to them. Again, rather than having an interaction and feeling negative, right? Perhaps you have a family member that's always criticizing you. Rather than letting that criticism impact you and affect you the rest of the day and make you feel negative towards the other family member, that's where you learn to let it go. You learn to brush it off. You learn to see it as a reflection of their beliefs and not your own. Because now you have all these other things in place to support you and to help foster that positivity within you. So that as you're going about your day, you have these sort of checkpoints and these positive anchors that help you get about your day and help you release the negativity and overcome it with more ease than what you used to have. But again, this is something that is a practice. It's something that takes intentional effort, time, commitment, all that good stuff. but it is something that is worth doing. Because again, you are being influenced by so many things in your life on a daily basis. And the more intentional you become with curating the things that you're exposed to, the more control you will have over the types of influences you're having, the types of outcomes that you're experiencing. And again, going back to the way that you think, you feel, and the actions you take. The final thing I'll encourage you to do is to be very intentional with sitting down and really considering what type of person would you like to be? What type of goals would you like to achieve? What types of plans do you have for yourself? And then going out and really finding other individuals, other support groups, perhaps even something like an online, like a Reddit thread, like a Reddit community, right? Like there's so much valuable resources out there that you may not even be familiar with because you haven't exposed yourself to that yet. So the trick is to really sit down and consider, what goal do you have? What type of support do you need to get there? And then consider how that would work at every level of the onion layers. Then go out and find those supports, those checkpoints to put in at every step of the way. That could be finding or becoming friends with someone that's very supportive of that goal. They're then a support, positive anchor in that inner layer. Finding a colleague at work that will give you positive feedback and will brainstorm with you on the lunch sessions. And you have that next layer anchored in. Perhaps consuming specific YouTube videos or podcasts that align with your goals. Well, now you have that next layer anchored in. And going through and really making sure that holistically across your life, across the different layers of social influence, you have put things in place for yourselves to help you succeed. Because no one else can do that for you. Ultimately, it's up to you and it's in your hands. And the beautiful thing about this is that there is so much out there. There are so many different types of influences out there, but you have control over what you allow to influence you. How much news are you watching? What shows are you exposing yourself to? What music are you listening to? Which people are you talking to? Which people are you sharing your plans and goals with? Which people are you spending too much time with that are draining you or making you feel negative? So much of this is in your control, but it is up to you to take that control. Make sense? All right. As we wrap up this episode, my 5-letter word for you is onion. As you move forward with this idea, I want you to remember the onion theory. It starts at the core. There's so many sources of influence, but holistically, the entire thing matters. Each layer impacts the layers around it. And even if you start with one that is in your control, it will impact the entire thing. Think of it as if there's mold on the onion, the mold will get through to all the layers over time. Don't let mold enter your life. Pick your layers carefully, as much as you can. Think about how much control you really have and use it to your advantage. All right. As always, I'd love to know about your biggest breakthroughs. If you have any questions whatsoever about the onion layer theory or anything else I've said, reach out to me, social media, email, whatever you prefer, and let me know. I'm always happy to explain these concepts in more depth. And I look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Your 5-Letter Word. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And as always, I love to hear about your breakthroughs. I'm here to serve your soul a cup of peace and a slice of joy. Until next time, take care.